Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be installing the brakes to the Resurrection Cherokee. Last video, we test drove the Resurrection Cherokee, and this video, we're kind of going back in time. Because as you can see, it's once again sitting back on jack stands. This video is gonna be all about the brake setup in the Resurrection Cherokee. Specifically, how exactly we're running our brake lines and brake hoses. Because once you've got 14 inches of travel up front, running a brake line from the caliper right to the frame is probably not the best way to go. I felt like making this its own video, even though it's kind of out of order from the last video, would benefit a lot of people. I definitely know it would have benefited me in the past, so I hope that this video will help some of y'all. So over here, let's talk about the parts that we're working with. So we've got a lot of really nice parts on the table, but we also got some rotors, some calipers, and some brake pads already installed to the Cherokee. Now I will say I kind of am disappointed with these brakes. I already installed them onto the Jeep on the front and the rear, and these are all from O'Reilly's. I kind of thought it was going to be the cheaper route compared to, say, if I went with Power Stop, which is a very common option, but it didn't end up being all that much cheaper, and then I had to buy them anyway because I was running out of time and I needed to test drive this thing. So they're going to do just fine, but I kind of am upset that I didn't go with the, I guess you could say, higher quality or higher performance option, but they're going to do just fine, so let's not worry about that. Now, going back to the table, we've got some steel brake line right here, just your regular 3/16 line. We've got an actual little tiny tube bender. I've always bent my brake line by hand, but I kind of wanted this to turn out a little cleaner, so I went and picked one of these up. I think this was like $12. Also to note, this is all from Summit. We've also got a bunch of miscellaneous brake lines right here. We've actually got a few, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got 3 27-inch lengths, and then we've got a few 12s. Over here, we've got some fittings. We've actually got a bunch of the same ones because we're gonna need a lot of these. Literally, we've got so many of them. We've got some other fittings. This is a 90, this is a 35. Those are both for the actual banjos on the calipers. We've got one of these T's. This is for the rear brakes. This is gonna go probably on top of that rear axle housing, the 10.5 Sterling. And then we've got these little grommets. That's what's in these two as well. And we're gonna talk about these later. Now the cool thing about these little brake hoses, these are from a company I specifically like called Russell, is that I can choose what fitting goes on the end. These come with a -3 AN end on both ends. And I can choose what I want on this end. So this is where the banjo is gonna go right into the caliper. It's got a 35-degree on it, threads right into there and seals right up. On the other end, is gonna be these, which adapt to the hard line. So it's gonna be a pretty slick setup. I think it's gonna look really clean. I'm gonna try to do the best job I've ever done to brake lines. I've used this same system in the past with all these little fittings in these hoses and have never had a problem leaking. So knock on wood, hopefully that's the case here too. So enough talking, let's get to work. I'm gonna start, since the front is probably gonna take a little bit longer, let's start on the rear. Did y'all hear me say I hope we don't have a problem with these leaking? Well, just remember that for later on in the video. That's all I'm gonna say for now. The thing with making a completely custom setup like I'm trying to do here is you really don't know what you need until you get under there, take some measurements, get some parts, install them, and realize you need something else. This happened way too many times during this video, and you'll see that later on. Particularly, for me, I would go under there with the parts I had ordered, fit them into place, and once I actually saw them in front of me, I would think of a better way to say, run the brake lines, maybe a different length brake hose would work better in a certain spot, and then I would go, order those parts, and try again. What I'm trying to say is what we're doing here is different than just ordering extended brake lines for a Cherokee. Now, my main goal when routing these lines and hoses is to route them in such a way that they won't get caught up on rocks, branches, or whatever may be out on the trail. I say this every time I make brake lines, so it probably won't happen. But next time I make brake lines, I'd like to invest in a hydraulic flare tool. This tool you see here is what I've used for years to flare brake lines on countless rigs. It's actually a Craftsman set. It works really good, but a hydraulic flare tool would work even better and probably a little quicker. This is as best I could do to keep this away, the brake line from probably getting hung up on some rocks. So it is tucked up there pretty nice. And then you can see we switch over to the hardline. We got just a simple bracket. I only had 2 of these brackets, so I'm actually probably gonna cut out some more. Wow, what is up with this camera? We got some nice bends coming up over the leaf spring instead of going under. Going under would have been easier and honestly might have looked a little better, but we're not gonna catch, we'd probably catch on something. We'd have more of a chance at least than going up this way. So we've got some nice bends and then we work our way to where they come together right there in the middle. And that brake line is not, I gotta make a bracket for the top up there. And once I do that, that brake line will come upwards. And that is a 27-inch brake line right there. These 2 on the ends are 12-inch. So these honestly, I wish I would have got them a little longer, maybe 15 inches, 18 inches. But that 27 is very long, so it should, I mean, I don't think this rear end is gonna be drooping all that much, but 27 inches should be plenty for the rear. I think I measured from point to point where it's gonna be mounted up top, it's 9 inches, and this can open up to a total of like 21 inches, something like that, the way I'm gonna have it mounted. So there should be plenty of brake line for droop. Anyways, I'm really happy with that. I think we can get these tires on now and call this done. And then we can work on the front right here. We're gonna probably start off with the front, doing the same thing, working on our axle. The rear obviously came together super quick. I expected that. I think it looks really good. Everything is tucked up nice and high. And I agree with probably a lot of y'all that going over the leaf spring with the hardline is an odd way to do this. I had a few people tell me that it's gonna be tough to get those leaf springs out of there now with the hardline in the way. All I have to say to that is I don't expect to take the leaf springs out anytime soon. When I eventually do, we can cross that bridge when we get there. I don't really see it being that big of an issue. Now for the front, I looked at this for a very long time, many days in a row, to try to figure out the best way to route the brake hoses from the calipers to the axle, as well as figure out the best length brake hose I was going to need. Eventually, I landed on a 27-inch brake hose for each side. The driver's side could have used something a little shorter, but I wanted to keep both sides the same. So eventually, when we're riding out on the trail, I can carry just one 27-inch brake line that can be used as a spare for either side. Anyways, the best way I could come up with routing these was in between the coilover and the bump stop. 2 components to our front suspension that are going to be constantly moving. So it may seem like a weird spot, but just trust me on this one. I made a bracket out of some very thin metal. I believe it's 18 gauge. And this bracket bolts underneath our bump pad. It has a bend in it, so it comes up at a 90 degree. And this is what our brake hose is going to attach to with the help of a P-clamp. This bracket is what's going to safely route our hose through the middle of the coilover and bump stop and meet up with the hardline past the coilover and bump stop. So, this is basically one of those brackets that we used in the back. I only had 2 of them, which is why I just made this. This is made out of a little bit of a thinner metal, but it should be just fine. And it actually might work better in this situation. I realized once I put this actual fitting in there, this bracket's made out of that really thin material that we cut that other bracket out of. I realized once we put, if I can get it on there, once we put that fitting in there and then put that clip on there, this lip on here is too thick. It's an 1/8 inch lip, which means this piece has to be at least 1/8 of an inch, or else it's gonna be loose inside of here once we put the clip on. So I trashed that idea and I made the same piece out of a piece of scrap 1/8 inch. This, I already tested it, is much better. It's gonna fit in there really nice and tight. I'm gonna get this installed onto the Jeep, and then we can start on the passenger side and then start on the hard lines on that axle. Now, I don't think I quite explained myself. On that front axle, you can see that we didn't run our brake hose from the caliper up to the unibody, like you would usually see. We have 14 inches of travel up front on this rig, and when you have massive amounts of travel like that, running the brake line from the caliper right up to the unibody is not the best way to go about that. We would need a massive brake hose, and during full bump or full droop or while we're turning, there would be a very good chance that that brake hose would catch on the tire, the bump stop, the coilover. There's a list of things under there that it could catch on. So instead, we're gonna be running our brake lines up the upper link, which is very common when you have a lot of travel like this. So you already saw me put the brake hoses on the axle ends. From here, we're gonna bend some more hardline up to that upper link. Then we're gonna use another little 12-inch brake hose to jump onto the upper link. Then we're gonna use some hardline down the upper link. Then we're gonna use some more 12-inch hoses to jump to the body of the Jeep. And then from there, it'll be hardline all the way to the proportion valve. Now, that is one way to do it. Some may not like how I'm switching from brake hose to hardline to brake hose to hardline a bunch of times, because that means there's a lot of connection points that could leak. But I'm confident in these brake hoses that I bought. I've used them in the past, never had a problem. And I think I do just a fine job building my brake lines, so I don't think I'll have a leakage problem. Another way to do this is to buy a massive brake hose, run it up the axle, run it up the upper link, and then meet at that hard line at the body of the Jeep. But I think what we're doing here is going to be a little cleaner. Now, at that upper link, we need some sort of way to hold the brake hoses or the brake line to the upper link. We could use zip ties. It's the cheapest and quickest way for sure, but I wanted to be a little cleaner than that, so I built what you see here, this little bracket. Now, I've been messing with this for a while. I actually built a few of them just to see what I like, and this one was really nice. But this is the one that we're going to be using. You can see we have our adapters for our hardline to our brake hoses, and then we also have two grommets up top. Those grommets are for our air locker air line, and this bigger one is for our axle breather. With us running these brake hoses and these brake lines really nice, I didn't want to have those other two lines just basically hanging out under there. I wanted them to be run just as nice. So I came up with this bracket. I think it's really nice. It's not going to be welded to the upper link or anything. It's actually going to be hose clamped. That's what you can see right here, just so we have some adjustability to it. There's going to be one of these at each end of the upper link, and what we're doing in the middle, we'll get to that later. It's going to be a little different than this. There is not a lot of room under there. This is a very tall bracket, but I already did some looking, and I'm pretty sure this should work. We're going to put these on, flex out the Jeep, make sure we're not going to have any interference. For now, this is the most forward one towards the axle. I'm going to put this one on, run our hard lines for that axle, and then we can move on to the rest of the upper link. All right, we've got a nice meeting point coming from that upper link down to the axle for both of those brake lines. I'll show you all some B-roll here. It is very tough to get some good camera shots down there while I'm working, but it actually looks really nice. I made a little special bracket that holds those two brake lines in place. From here, I'm gonna bend the two brake lines for the Dana 60 for each side. The passenger side should be extremely simple. I think it's only gonna have one bend in it, while the driver's side is gonna have a few bends in it. It might be a little weird, but we'll get it done. So to cut these brake lines, I'm using a tool specifically for this. This is just a thing that you put around the brake line, tighten it up, spin it a few times, tighten it up some more, and keep doing that until the brake line is cut. This is how I've always done it. Never had a problem. Because you definitely would not be able to use like a pair of cutters like this, because that would pinch off the brake line and you wouldn't be able to use it. And once it's cut, the inside diameter, you want to make sure there's no debris in there. I like to take a cutter or a knife and just clean it out just like that. And that kind of opens it right up and makes sure there's no debris in there. Same thing with the other side. So this piece is basically done. We just gotta flare it now. This already had a bend in it right there at the end because this was actually meant to be for the rear and I messed it up, but it's gonna work out in this instance. we've got that easier one done, the passenger side that you can slightly see from here. Now we're gonna do the, I guess we can call it the tougher one. It's really not gonna be that tough. Maybe just slightly complicated. I'd say no more than 3 bends in it, but it's weird. We have to go from this spot right here over the diff and kind of down and then up into the other spot, the fitting right over there. So I could have come off of this bracket to the left, but then literally these two hoses were touching. So if I could go back, I probably would have ordered a longer brake line for the driver's side and then just gone right to the bracket. But I mean, we're already here. I think this is gonna look super clean. We're just gonna have a weird small section of a hard brake line. So yeah, let's bend it up and see what we can do. We are running low on brake line. You can see all we got is this small spool right here. I thought I ordered more. Apparently I only ordered 25 feet. And then one of the rear brake lines, I actually messed up. So we got this small section right here. I think this will be perfect for what we're trying to do here on the driver's side. So I'm gonna use this so we don't waste more brake line. I did order some more because we still need a section to go from the proportion valve to actually same length from the proportion valve down to where we're gonna come off our upper link, and then from the proportion valve all the way back to the rear axle. So that we gotta try to save as much brake line as possible. Now that small piece I was talking about using didn't end up working. I had to use a new piece anyways, and then if I remember correctly, I messed this up 2 more times after that. I bent one of them the wrong way and then one of them too short, so we're gonna be ordering another 25-foot roll either way. All said and done, I'm happy with this line. It came out really nice. Shouldn't get caught up on anything, and now our Dana 60 and Sterling are done. We're gonna hold off on the upper link for now and instead move on to the lines coming off of the proportion valve. This bracket right here usually bolts to the booster where the master bolts to, but it's not gonna work in our case just because of, on the other side, how close our coilover towers are. So we're gonna cut this off. We might just leave it without a bracket, I'm not sure, but we'll see. We're gonna probably see if the old lines work for it. Let's go take a look at those. So we've got 2 lines right here that go from the master to that proportion valve. We're gonna see if these work. If not, we'll be cutting these up and making new lines and using the old fittings. But we got pretty tight quarters over here. We've got 2 big, I mean, obviously we have our coilover tower right here. Not much room between that and the master. And we've got 2 giant harnesses. Obviously we can move those if needed. But yeah, this might be tough. That'll definitely work. So those 2 lines without the bracket should hold it in place just fine. I'm really not too worried. It is, you can see it's kind of at a weird angle. It might be tough to get a rear line on here, but I think we're gonna try it. And then if it doesn't work, then we'll figure it out from there. Change of plans. That rear line would be way too close to the booster. So we're gonna chop these up, use the fittings, and make our own lines. I think the only thing that we have to keep in mind is that both of those 2 lines need to be roughly the same length. I'm gonna try my best to make them roughly the same length. That should do the trick. This rear line is a little shorter than I would have liked, but I mean, just by a few inches. If it ends up being a problem, then we can change it. That looks pretty good though. That gives us plenty of room on the left-hand side right here, and see it on the back over here. And I don't really know if it has to be, but I did it anyway. I kept it flat because that's how it comes stock. Before it was slightly tilted backwards. Like, once again, I don't know if that would have been an issue, but I mean, keeping it flat is the safe way to go, I'd say. So one of the last things I actually just remembered about it, our hose for the Sterling 10.5 in the rear needs to go somewhere on the body. Now, I could have used one of our simple brackets up there that just holds the brake line, but I decided to do the same as we're doing in the front and have something for the axle breather and an air line. So that's exactly what this does, and I actually looked under there for quite a bit. I was thinking about somehow bolting this, or maybe not welding because we already painted everything down there, but I was thinking of bolting this to the cross member down there. I decided against that, and I decided we're gonna go straight through the floor of the Jeep. There's a good spot down there. It's gonna be probably the best spot, and I really don't mind having 2 bolt heads sticking up on the floor of the Jeep from the inside. I think that's gonna be the least of our worry. We're gonna have carpet in this thing, so we won't even see them. So I'm gonna get this bolted into place, and then we can run our rear line from the proportion valve to this bracket. This bracket came out awesome. It's in a good spot to allow for the most amount of up and down travel that this rear suspension can offer us. And like I said, it holds the brake line, axle breather, and air line for our rear locker. Also, I should note all of this B-roll that you see right here, right now, is post video. So it's kind of a little sneak peek, if you will. Now I had to make another order from Summit for some different length brake hoses and some more hardline. I will say they're pretty quick about it. I got this package the same week that I ordered it. I used the new hardline that we just got in to bend and flare up our line going to our rear axle. Or I should say the fancy new bracket that we made. All right, y'all, we are under the front of the Jeep here. We got the front axle right there, transmission right here, and right here, we've got our upper link and our drive line in the front. You can see right here, I'm running, this is the rear brake line. This is coming from the proportion valve way up there, and it's cut to length already. It's going to the back. I don't have the fitting on the back yet. I haven't flared it, but it is cut slightly over length. So I'm running into an issue right now. I know it's really tough to see what's going on right over here. Usually all our lines coming to the front run along this driver's side unibody rail. You can see I have very limited room. I'm not even gonna try to show y'all. This link is incredibly close to here. We've got a lot going on back here. We've got the unibody, the 3-link cross member has some bolts coming through the unibody over here, and we've got this bolt is kind of in the way. So I'm very limited on room, and we've got to run a lot of lines back here. We've got to run at least one brake line. I think our brake lines coming off of the link are going to run this way. We've got this fuel line. It's actually tucked under here right now, but I think, you know, it's in the way of getting crushed by this upper link. You can see that in the past, this upper link has literally created an indent right here. So I want to move all these lines, basically what I'm trying to say. I want to move all these lines kind of up to where this one is. Right now, it looks absolutely terrible, but that's the plan right now. And I think before I can move on with this, I think I gotta figure out what's going on with this upper link and the brake lines and all the lines that are coming off of this from the front. So you can see, we've got one of those brackets up front here that we already talked about, and I think I'm gonna put at least 1 or 2 more. So I'm gonna cut out 1 more. I gotta kind of decide where the last bracket on this upper link has to go. I'm hoping, I mean, this is the end of it right here. I'm hoping that we can put it somewhere, I mean, honestly, kind of towards the middle, kind of a little past the middle. We've got some 17-inch brake lines that are gonna come off this link that are coming from the front brakes, as opposed to the 12-inch brake lines that we've been using throughout the build. So they're a little longer. I ordered them that way just so we have a little more to work with. But let's go cut out this last brackets and just figure out exactly where it's gonna go. Once again, sorry, I know I know it's super tight. I don't have a good wide lens. So at this point in the video, or should I say at this point in the install, I am finally working on the brake lines on that upper link. Finally. And I, once again, decided to switch it all up. We're gonna talk about that in a minute though. For now, I'll let you know that I made our final bracket design for our upper link, and I built our front hard lines going from the upper link to our proportional valve. We switched things up a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and install everything and then we can talk about it after. But I just got this order in, and what is inside of this box is the last piece of the puzzle so we can get this thing test driven. And I know from last video, all of you already saw this thing test driven, but right now it's a pretty exciting feeling. I ordered this package on a Thursday night and I got it on a Saturday. Yes, shipping was really expensive, but this was the last piece to the puzzle before I could test drive this Jeep. All I got were some different length brake hoses for the upper link because I decided to change up our original design we talked about earlier, which was the hose to the hardline and the hose to the hardline. We're not gonna be doing that anymore. What we're gonna be doing instead is a much better idea. I'll get under the Jeep in a little bit with y'all and we're gonna talk about it. So I kind of thought this was gonna be a problem. I noticed the threads on this proportional valve, they seemed a little crooked. And of course, I tightened this as much as I could now and it's still leaking. So what I'm gonna do, I don't have an extra one with me. I don't think that's something they really sell in stores. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this off of my other Cherokee. I'm gonna have to down that and we'll just have to order one and we'll get the proportion valve put onto this Jeep. So I was able to fix our leak and proportion and valve issue with the one off my red Jeep. That ended up being the least of my problems. I ended up having much bigger problems that set me back a day or so. And I will say, I put down the camera for a lot of it, so I guess we'll talk about that here in a minute too. That one should be better. So the brakes are done in the Resurrection Cherokee. As you saw last video, we've already taken this thing for a test drive. I kind of regret making this video its own, but if they had been in the same video, last video would have been like an hour long. So I was able to go a little more in depth on the brakes by making this its own video. So I hope by doing this, it helps at least someone get an idea of what they want to do for their brake system in their Cherokee, or just any vehicle in general. This can be applied to other off-road builds, not just Jeeps. So I did have a very, very crazy leakage problem at just about every single connection on the Jeep. This was my first time using steel brake lines rather than copper brake lines. And I will tell you, you have to crank those fittings very, very tight on that steel brake line to get it to seal right, that is. I use steel brake line. I don't even know why I used it. I think because it's got that silver color to it, I think it was gonna look better. I did end up actually spraying them with some silver spray paint, so they're not gonna rust or anything. I could have done that to the copper brake lines, but in the future, I'll probably be using copper because this was quite annoying. It has been a few weeks now. We've been driving the Jeep quite a bit and the pedal feels awesome. We had to bleed it quite a few times, get some air out of it, but right now it honestly feels really good. Better than what it was at first. In the future, we probably will be going Hydro Boost, but that's not something that we're gonna be warned about right now. I will say that the stock master cylinder and the brake booster will not lock up these 40s going down the road, but it can stop the Jeep pretty quickly. So I think we should be good for now. Overall, I'm happy with the way everything came out, and I think we did a pretty decent job. We did change what we were doing with that upper link. There is not a lot of room under there at all, and after looking at it for quite a while, like literally hours, flexing the Jeep left and right, putting the Jeep at full bump and full droop, I decided that we only needed one bracket on that upper link. I ordered some 18-inch brake hoses, and those connect the axle to the unibody basically. They go from that bracket we made on the axle through that bracket on the upper link and then meet up with the hard line on a bracket on the unibody. I think it came out pretty clean. We didn't have to make 3 different brackets, and we have grommets in the holes on that bracket, so we shouldn't have any chafing with that brake hose. I like how it came out. If we had more room, I would probably do what I originally was talking about with having the 3 different brackets. Maybe I would do what I was talking about with the hard line on the upper link, but this seems to work and be the best route that we could have taken. Next video, we're gonna be taking this Jeep for its first test drive off-road. I think it's gonna be quite a blast. We're gonna actually see how this thing does. I have a lot of things I've been doing to the Jeep and I can't wait to show y'all. I've got a pile of parts that we're gonna be installing onto the Jeep very soon, once we figure out how it does off-road. We've got, plus or minus a couple days, just about 50 days until we hit Rubicon in the Resurrection Cherokee. We're gonna be towing the Resurrection Cherokee along with my brothers TJ all the way to California to hit the Rubicon Trail. 50 days is not a long time. We've got a great group of people going. I am so excited. If y'all want to support the channel, go check out backcountrybeagles.shop. We've got a bunch of merch that we've been working on over there, and we've got some more in the works, so I'm pretty excited about that. We've also got some rear inner extra unibody stiffeners. I'm sure if you've been watching the videos, you've heard me talk about them before. So definitely go check that out. Every single dollar spent on that website goes back into the channel to make better videos for y'all. Also, huge shout out to Nick's Fabrication on Instagram. He was parting out a Jeep and he sent me a new proportion valve, well, a new to me proportion valve that I'm gonna be putting back onto the Red Cherokee since I had to steal that proportion valve for the Resurrection Cherokee. So huge shout out to Nick's Fabrication. Thank you so much, dude. Anyways, I've got a ton to do to the Resurrection Cherokee. I've got to get back to work. And we've got a ton of videos coming out this month, so I got to get back to editing. I appreciate y'all for watching. I'll see you on the trail, and I'll see you next time. That should be good.
Show them your knees.
Okay.